about the anatomy of the arm, which was studied in the lecture last week. So first, let's look into these two bones, radius side ulna. You can have this faster. You know, you have two bones in the forearm, right?
Yes.
Why less number of students? Why they're absent?
Because there is exam. One and they
Okay.
Picture. What is this? Radius one.
So we learn about two bones which form the skeleton of the forearm. Skeleton of the forearm. So skeleton of the forearm having two bones. So one on the medial side and one on the lateral side. That is towards the thumb and towards the little finger. Towards the thumb you have a bone that is called the radius, and towards the little finger you have a bone called as the ulna. Okay, so this is the skeleton of the forearm from elbow to wrist. So here is the thumb and this is the little finger. So towards the thumb you have a bone that is the radius, and towards the little finger you have the bone which is the ulna. Okay, so two bones is the skeleton of the forearm. Skeleton of the forearm. Yes. So first let's study about the radius. So this is the radius. Okay. So you see this bone, it's a what type of bone? It's a long bone. It's a long bone, and you know how the long bone is explained. How it is explained? Like any long bone, it is explained as having an upper end, a lower end, and then a shaft. So first let's look into the upper end. Okay. So upper end shows the topmost part, so which is round and circular. So that is the head of the radius. What is it called as? The head of the radius. The upper surface or the superior surface of the head is smooth, and even it is depressed. There is a fovea-like structure, right? So there is depressed, it is smooth, covered by articular cartilage. So that is the region which articulates with humerus. Which part of the humerus? Capitulum of the humerus to form the humero-radial part of the elbow joint. Elbow joint is having two components, right? The joint between the radius and humerus, humero-radial, and the joint between humerus and ulna, the humero-ulnar. So two components. So this head articulates the upper surface with the capitulum of the humerus to form the elbow joint, part of the elbow joint. So now, if you see the circumference of the head, on the medial side, again it shows a facet. So this is the thumb side radius and the little finger side, the ulna, two bones forming the yes. This is again the forearm bones. What is the radius. So towards the radial tuberosity, here there is a little wide part of the area over the head. The circumference of the head shows a facet, okay, which articulates with the similar notch on the upper end of the ulnar to form the superior radio-ulnar joint. What is that? Superior radio-ulnar joint. So head of the radius articulates with two bones. The upper surface with the capitulum of the humerus, and over its circumference there is similar facet, so which articulates with the radial force of the ulna to form radio-ulnar joint. Which radio-ulnar? Superior radio-ulnar joint. Okay, so two joints, head. So now down to the head you have a constricted part that is called the neck of the radius. What is this called as? The neck of the radius. And down to the neck, on its medial side it shows a big tubercle. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this tubercle. So this is the tubercle. Okay, this is the head. Upper surface articulates with the capitulum, and this surface here articulates with the ulna. You can see it here. The head articulating with the ulna. This is the superior radioulnar joint. Whereas the upper surface articulates with the capitulum. And down to the neck you have this tubercle that is called as the radial tuberosity. What is that called as? Radial tuberosity. The posterior surface of which will have the articulation of, what is that? Attachment of which muscle? Which muscle is attached to the radial tuberosity? Radial tuberosity. What is the insertion of biceps brachii? Yeah? No. Biceps brachialis to the coronary process. Yeah, this is the attachment of the biceps. Biceps tendon divides into two parts, right? One is the tendon and one is the aponeurosis. Aponeurosis goes for deep facial insertion and even to the posterior part of the ulna. Whereas the tendon is inserted into the posterior surface of the radial tuberosity. Posterior surface of the radial tuberosity. So radial tuberosity gives insertion for biceps brachii. Biceps brachii. So that is the features in the upper end. Features in the upper end. Now coming to the lower end. Lower end, it is little wider part, bigger part compared to the upper end, right? Okay, more heavier compared to upper end. So the inferior aspect, the inferior surface of the lower end, if you observe, it is again smooth because it is articular, covered by articular cartilage, articulates with the proximal row of carpal bones. Proximal row of carpal bones to form the wrist joint. To form the wrist joint. Am I clear? Wrist joint. So now even if you observe the lower end, the lateral part of the lower end shows a slight projection which is extending downwards. See this? Okay? You can see it here. So this one. Compared to the rest of the lower end, small part of it projected downwards. So that is called as the styloid process. What is that? Styloid process. You can feel it here in the snuff box. This is the styloid process. Styloid process of the radius. Styloid process of the radius. And when you observe this anterior surface of the lower end, it is smooth. Okay, it is smooth. Whereas if you observe the posterior surface of the lower end, it shows a tubercle again. Okay, it shows a tubercle. See there? Tubercle, and on either side of the tubercle there are grooves. See there? So because as I said, here there are many muscles, extensor muscles of the forearm. Okay, so extensor compartment muscles, they all go to hand, right? So when they are going, they make grooves on the bone. They make grooves on the bone. And this is the tubercle which is bigger. That is called as dorsal tubercle. What is it called as? Dorsal tubercle. Because it is on the dorsal side. Or also called as tubercle of Lister. Lister, L-I-S-T-E-R, name of the person. Okay. What is this tubercle called as? Tubercle of Lister. So that is the features on the lower end. So lower end, styloid process, and inferior surface articulates with first row of the carpal bones from the wrist joint. And even if you observe the medial part of the lower end, again there is a facet, or you can say a smooth area. Okay, so that articulates with the head of the ulna. Head of the ulna to form the inferior radio-ulnar joint, exactly like this. See this? This is how the two bones are articulated. Head of the ulna to form the inferior radio-ulnar joint. Upper end head articulates with two bones, capitulum of the humerus and radial notch on the ulna. Lower end, wrist and inferior radio-ulnar joint. Am I clear? So this is about, yeah? Inferior radio-ulnar joint. As there are two radio-ulnar joint between radius and ulna, one above and one down. So this is superior and inferior radio-ulnar joints. Am I clear? Yes. This is about the lower end. And now we come to the shaft. Shaft, okay? So if you observe the shaft, one border is very sharp. See this? Okay? Where is the radius bone? Yeah? Yeah, that border is very sharp, right? So that is the medial border. That is the medial border, or also called as interosseous border. What is also called as? Interosseous border, because it gives attachment of the interosseous membrane. So the radius and ulna are articulating like this. So now there is a space between these two bones, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this space, so even if you observe the ulna, here also very sharp border. Here also sharp border. This is the medial border and this is the lateral border of the ulna. Between them, there is a membrane. There is a membrane that is called as interosseous membrane. So as the interosseous membrane is attached to this border, this is called as interosseous border, or also called as medial border. Medial border. Very sharp, very prominent. Okay. And whereas if you observe the lateral border, it is round. It is round. Okay. And the posterior border is also there, which is clear in the middle part. Posterior border. Posterior border, lateral border, medial border. Clear?
Clear.
Okay. And now the surfaces, the anterior surface, the lateral surface and the posterior surface. Clear? Posterior surface, anterior surface, lateral surface. Clear? Okay. So medial border or the intraosseous border, lateral border, posterior border. And if you observe the anterior surface in the upper end, so you can see an oblique line. See that? That is called as the oblique line. Oblique line of the radius, where you have the attachment of
This
supine here, this one. Oblique line. That is the oblique line, right? So that is the oblique line. So here it meets. See here. See, and even it extends on the posterior side also.
Oblique line.
Okay. So that is the oblique line. So these are the features in the shaft and even the full radius. So I repeat it again. Upper end, head,
Head of the
neck and
radius.
tuberosity. Head with capitulum of the humerus and
Neck.
with the radial notch of the ulna. So two joints. Elbow joint, superior radial notch. Radial tuberosity, biceps, brachii tendon. Okay. And the lower end, styloid process and wrist joint and even the inferior radial nerve joint. Dorsal aspect, tubercle. That is the tubercle of Lister, or also called as the dorsal tubercle. Shaft, medial border or the intraosseous border, lateral border, posterior border. Anterior surface, posterior surface, lateral surface. Okay. So both on the upper end of the anterior surface as well as the posterior surface shows an oblique lines. Oblique lines. So that is about the radius. We'll look into the muscle attachments. As in the beginning of the forearm only I was telling you, the attachment of the forearm muscles is not in your objectives, so you need not bother about the attachment except few muscles, which we will study it together as the forearm bones. Okay, I will show you one slide which show the muscle attachment. So next bone we'll look into the, or before going into, or we'll check it later. So now, before going into the next ulna, so let's learn about how to identify the radius as right or left. Right or left. Again, important from your OSPI point of view. How will you identify the bone? Yeah.
Lateral. And
So upper end above, lower end down, and look for the sharp intraosseous border. It should be facing medially. Medially. It should be facing medially. Okay. Towards the little finger, medially. And then, as I said, the styloid process should be lateral side. Styloid process should be lateral side, and anterior surface should be smooth. Posterior surface, there is a tubercle. That is tubercle of Lister should be posterior side. So that determines the side. So which side is this? This is the left radius. Am I clear? Why not right? When you hold it right, how it becomes? It becomes like this. So this posterior surface tubercle, styloid will become medial. All these points will contradict, right? So it belongs to left. What are the points you should look for?
Neck.
Styloid process, sharp medial border. Sharp medial border. So these are the two important points. Okay, or even your anterior surface smooth and dorsally there is a tubercle. Understood? So these points will explain whether the radius is right or left. Clear? Clear?
No.
Yes, what difficulty you face?
Could you repeat it?
You make an attempt, I will explain. So which side is that?
This left.
Left. Why left?
My hand left, but this I didn't know.
I didn't ask you your hand with the right hand. Even a kid will tell which is your this left hand or right hand. I'm asking about the radius.
I don't know.
Which side? Make an attempt.
Sharp.
Hmm. So next is again one more picture showing the articulations of the what is that radius. So here superior radial knot joint, here is the inferior radial knot joint, the radial tuberosity. And this is the short medial border. Okay, next go to the ulna. Go to the ulna. This is the ulna. It is also a long bone having an upper end and a lower end. So what difference you notice between the radius and ulna?
Notch.
The upper end is bigger here.
Yes.
Lower end is smaller. Whereas in the radius, upper end is little small, whereas lower end is wider, right? So upper end is wider and heavier compared to lower end. And even the shaft also tapers. Upper it is strong. As you go down, it is thin. It is thin because ulna will not take part in wrist joint. Only the radius takes part in the joint. The wrist joint. Okay, so that's why it is very thin. Okay. So now if you observe the upper end of the same, we will study like upper end, lower end, and then shaft. First the upper end. So upper end, if you observe, it is like you can say C-shaped, or you can say beak of a bird like. Okay. So C-shaped, having an upper process and a lower process. So upper process is called as olecranon process. What is it called as? Olecranon process. Whereas lower process is called as coronoid process. So don't confuse between coracoid and coronoid. If you write coracoid, it is wrong. Where is coracoid? In the scapula. Here it is coronoid. So usually you confuse between coracoid and coronoid. Okay. So coronoid in the ulna, coracoid in the scapula. Okay. So if you do that mistake, it's completely wrong, right? So coronoid process and olecranon process. Between them is a C-shaped or U-shaped cavity, again notch, which is smooth. That is called as trochlear notch. What is this called as? Trochlear notch, which articulates with trochlea of the humerus to form humero-ulnar part of elbow joint. Okay, so here see the articulation of the ulna with the trochlea. So we can see it here. So when you do the flexion, the coronoid process will go and fit in the coronoid fossa of the humerus. When you do extension, so this is the olecranon fossa. It fits into olecranon process fits into olecranon fossa. Okay, allowing the movement at the elbow. Okay, this is the coracoid process, coronoid process, and olecranon process, and the trochlear notch. And if you observe the lateral surface of this upper end, so here it shows a notch. Notch. Okay, so that is what called as radial notch or radial fossa for the head of the radius to form the superior radio-ulnar joint. Superior radio-ulnar joint. See here, this is the joint between the head and then the upper end of the ulna. Okay, radial notch. So that is the superior radio-ulnar joint. Now you come down the coronoid process. If you observe here, there is a tuberosity or slight elevation, and it is very rough. See that? So that is the ulnar tuberosity. What is that called as? Ulnar tuberosity on the anterior side. So this down, lightly. Ulnar tuberosity. This is the coronoid process, right? Down the coronoid process, you have a tubercle, not very prominent like radius, a little elevation, or it is rough. So that is the ulnar tuberosity, where you have the insertion of which muscle? Ulnar tuberosity. Biceps, I told you, biceps in the radial tuberosity. Everyone was telling. Brachialis. What is the attachment? Brachialis. Brachialis is inserted there in the ulnar tuberosity along with some part of your coronoid process. Okay? Yeah? Okay, do the flexion. And now, the olecranon process, if you see that its upper surface, it is again rough, where you have the attachment of olecranon process. Which muscle? Which do the extension? Triceps. You have the insertion of triceps. You have the insertion of triceps. So now coming to the lower end. Lower end is small, and lower end of the ulna is called as head. Whereas head in the radius is in the upper end. Here head of the ulna is in the lower end. Okay, that is the one more difference. Lower end of the ulna is called as head. And similar to the styloid process of the radius, here also you have a medial projection from the lower end, that is called as styloid process of the ulna. So these two styloid process, one from the ulna and one from the radius. They make the surface a cup shape, a C shape, so that the carpal bones, they come and fit. They give stability to the wrist joint. Joint. Whereas if you see the lower inferior surface of the head of the ulna, it is not articular. It is not articular. It is separated from the wrist joint cavity by a disc. Articular disc. Cartilage will be there which separates ulna from wrist joint. So ulna will not take part in the formation of wrist joint. Very important point from your examination point of view. So wrist joint is between radius and first row of carpal bones, not the ulna. So ulna will not take part in wrist joint, whereas in ankle joint you can compare wrist with ankle. So ankle joint, both tibia and fibula, they take part in ankle joint, whereas in the wrist, best is now next week onwards you are going to start the lower limb. So you compare and study. It will be easy to understand, and even for your remembrance also. You compare upper limb with lower limb, thigh with arm, leg with forearm, hand with foot, and the joints also. Shoulder joint with hip joint, knee joint with elbow, and even wrist with the ankle. Like that you compare and study. Okay. So that is the lower end of the ulna, which is called as the head. And its what is that? Lateral surface, again little smooth because it is articulates with the lower end of the radius to form the inferior radio-ulnar joint. And now coming to the shaft, again shaft, you have a sharp interosseous border. Now it is lateral border. And even you have a sharp anterior border which is prominent in the upper part. Anterior border, then lateral border, and a very prominent posterior border which is subcutaneous below the skin. Posterior border, you can feel it. This is the olecranon process. This is the posterior border. You can feel in your own forearm, especially the upper part. It is subcutaneous below the skin, right?
Yeah.
So that is the sharp posterior border, anterior border, and then the lateral border. The surfaces are anterior surface, then medial surface, and then posterior surface. Clear? So that is about the ulna. So now let's look at again side determination. How will you determine the side? The upper end is very important here. The notch, the trochlear notch should face anteriorly. This sharp border should be laterally. Okay. Radial notch again laterally. Styloid process medially. So which side is this?
No, left.
That is the left. So when you first commit a mistake, then tell us. Even if you tell the right, it is not accepted because only two answers, either right or left. If you say right, then finish. Then if you say left, then it's of no importance, right? Because only two answers. One, first you say wrong, then it is wrong only. Okay, you cannot correct it.
This also left, right?
Tell me.
Left.
How?
Lateral.
Upper end should be upper side. Trochlear force notch should face anteriorly. Yes, border should be medially. So that's the left ulna. Left ulna. Okay. So very simple. See, this short notch should face anteriorly. This should face laterally, and the styloid process medially, and the sharp border again laterally. Okay. The left side. It cannot be right. Right? So that is the side determination of the ulna. Now let's look into the. So this is again articulation of the head with the upper end of the ulna to form the superior radio-ulnar joint. Okay. So that is what mentioned about the interosseous border. Okay?
Yes, interosseous border.
The lower end, inferior radio-ulnar joint. So these two styloid process. So this one of the ulna and this of the radius. So making a cup shape, right? So that the carpal bones can articulate. So that there is stability to the joint. If it is flat, then there will be chances of slipping the bones, right? See that? This one. This is the first row of carpal bones between the radius and the carpal bones. The ulna is out.
Yes.
Okay. This is the interosseous membrane. Same again, interosseous membrane. See. So even they consider this as a joint, a fibrous joint, middle radioulnar joint, superior radioulnar joint, inferior radioulnar joint, and middle radioulnar joint. This interosseous membrane is very important to keep the two bones together, and even see the fibers, they are running downwards like this, right? So that it will allow the movement of the radius over the ulna. So when you do the movement of pronation, what happens? This now, these two bones are straight like this, okay? So now when you do the movement of pronation, what happens? Radius
become above.
overrides the ulna. This is allowed by the interosseous membrane, as the fibers are running like this. So when this moves, it will allow the movement, okay?
Yes.
So that is pronation. And then again coming back to original position is supination, okay? So this movement is taking place at this joint, superior, inferior and middle. So this is the picture showing the supination and pronation. See here, radius crossing over the ulna in pronation movement. And coming back is supination, original position. So this is the picture showing the muscle attachments. You remember these two attachment over the trochlear, olecranon process, attachment over the coronoid process and ulnar tuberosity, attachment over the radial tuberosity, and even look into the attachment of the supinator. So this is the attachment of supinator. Which surface is this? Lateral surface of your, what I said, the oblique line, no? Oblique line. Intercept with the oblique lines. Just above that you have this attachment of the supinator, which goes behind and then attached to the medial surface of your ulna muscle, bone ulna. So that causes, so when you do the supination, see here, from here it goes. So the pronation position is like this. So the muscle is going down like this. So when this contracts, it brings the radius to the original position. Supination. This is pronation. Okay? This is done by the pronator teres and the biceps. The pronator teres, from here it goes to the radius. When this contracts, it pulls the radius over the ulna. The supination, reverse. So it is going from here to ulna like this. So when this contracts, what happens? It brings the radius back to its position. That is supination. That's why the muscle is named on its action. That is supinator. So supination you have two muscles. Pronation, two muscles again. What are they? Pronation, two muscles named on their action. Yes. One more. Pronator quadratus, which is there down like a band. Okay. So pronator quadratus, pronator teres. Supinator, two muscles. Biceps brachii and then supinator. So remember this attachment. That's it. Okay. So concentrate on this. So that is, one is the brachialis, okay, and then the supinator for the insertion over the this also, and even this. Look at this big attachment. What is this muscle? It's a very big muscle in the front of the forearm. Digitorum profundus muscle, which is a deep muscle of the front of the forearm. There are two digitorum, right? Yes. Flexor digitorum, superficialis and profundus. So you can see the insertion of the triceps over the olecranon process. So now let's get applied aspect. So what you can see in this picture, there is fracture of radius, the lower end of the radius. Lower end of the radius is fractured. So this is the most commonest fracture. Most commonest fracture, especially in old patients, I mean old peoples. Old peoples just fall a wetty surface or the floor and they will slip, and when they are falling, they usually, to protect themselves, they will use their hands and then fracture. Fracture of the lower end of the radius. It is called as Colles fracture. What is it called as? Colles fracture. Very commonest fracture. Most common fracture in the body is Colles fracture because of osteoporosis. In old people, what happens as they grow old? What is the main process of osteoporosis? Yeah, calcium is taken out, especially in females after menopause. After menopause, they go for osteoporosis. So when there is calcium is taken out from the bones become weak. So when they fall, usually they will have fracture. The most commonest fracture in such osteoporotic patients is the Colles fracture. Next common fracture is fracture neck femur. Neck femur, the bone of the thigh. Okay, this is the second most commonest fracture. So first commonest fracture is Colles fracture. Maybe asked, maybe in further classes, maybe in other departments like your no, not clavicle.
Who said that?
I didn't say that.
No, you said that.
No. I didn't say like most commonest. Fractures may occur in the clavicle. I might have said like that. No, I didn't say like common fracture. Did I say like that?
Yes, you said that.
No. The radius, lower end of the radius fractures, and that is called as the Colles fracture. And as this fracture is very close to the joint, and becomes what is that? Impossible to make the joint immobile. So how will you what is that? Treat the fractures? Usually you put cast, right?
Yes.
You know cast. So why do you put cast? To prevent the movement at the joint. So before putting the cast, what you do? You bring the two fracture ends together in line, okay, and then put cast, especially preventing the movement. One joint proximal and one joint distal. So you will do that. As this fracture is very close to the joint, it becomes difficult to keep the two fracture ends in line, especially when you want to treat it traditionally. Okay, so that's why it becomes very difficult to keep the two fracture ends in alignment, and usually they go for malunion. So that's why nowadays we are treating this Colles fracture surgically. We do operation and put some plate, steel plate, and then put screws, tight them together so that we can keep them together. Okay, we are treating surgically. If you don't treat it surgically, if you are treating it with the cast and all, as it is very close to the joint, it becomes impossible, almost impossible to keep the two fracture ends together in alignment. They go for malunion, one above the other. Okay, so what happens? Such deformity occurs. It exactly looks like a dinner fork, you know. So this upper end, this hand goes above the radius. There is a prominence. When you observe your hand like this, so the forearm and hand are in line. Okay. So what happens in that deformity? Hand is slightly at the upper position compared to the forearm, making a curve. So that looks like a fork. Such cases are called as what is the dinner fork deformity. Dinner fork deformity. Where you find this dinner fork deformity? Colles fractures. Yes. And even fractures of the both bones are also can occur. Okay. So this is about the radius signs ulna. So let's learn about the arm. Go to the table. Just. So anterior compartment shows muscles. What muscles? Muscles, vessel sign? No. What muscles you find in the anterior compartment? Arm. Broad minor. Scapular. Scapular muscles there. Going to
from above this.
Anterior compartment muscles.
Yes.
That's a three muscles.
Three muscles, brachialis,
Biceps brachii and brachialis. Brachialis. Three muscles. Coracobrachialis, brachialis and biceps brachii. Three muscles. Okay, let's find these three muscles here in the arm. So this is what is
biceps,
brachii. Biceps brachii having two heads of origin. What are they?
long head and short head.
Long head and short head. So short head originating from
Coracoid process.
coracoid process. See this? This is the short head and this is the long head. Long head and short head. Long head originating from the supraglenoid
Supraglenoid
tubercle. Supraglenoid tubercle. So I was telling you to keep one point in mind about the long head of the biceps. What is that?
It's intracapsular.
Very good. It's having intracapsular origin. That means it is originating within the capsule of the shoulder joint. Okay, and then comes out of the shoulder joint between the two tubercles, intertubercular sulcus. It pierces the capsule and then comes out, and then joins with the short head. Short head arises from
Coracoid process.
coracoid process. The tip of the coracoid process, along with two muscles from the
Short of those and the
coracobrachialis. Coracobrachialis. So this is what is the coracobrachialis muscle, and this is the short head together. Okay. So these two, long head and short head, they join, form the muscle belly. Belly of the biceps muscle. So then it runs downwards, front of the forearm, covering this muscle. What is this muscle? Here they have cut the biceps to show the deep muscle. What is this muscle? Brachialis muscle. To show the brachialis muscle. It is under cover of the biceps. Okay. So now the biceps muscle, as it runs downwards, it forms a tendon which is divided into two. So this is what is the flattened tendon, which goes to the deep fascia, superficial above the muscle, deep fascia, and even to the posterior border of the ulna. See this. This is the what is this? Bicipital aponeurosis. Much of it will mix with the deep fascia and even go to the posterior border of the ulna. And whether the tendon, this is the tendon, goes to the radial tuberosity. Radial tuberosity. Clear? So this is the biceps having two heads of origin, a long head and then a short head, along with the coracobrachialis. This is the coracobrachialis from the tip of the coracoid process. This is the coracoid process, right? This is the coracoid process.
Yes.
Okay. From that it arises. Okay. The coracobrachialis and short head. Okay. And then the long head from the supraglenoid tubercle. Both heads are meeting, form the belly of the muscle, and then this muscle belly, biceps muscle belly, divides into two tendons. One that is the biceps tendon, and the other is bicipital aponeurosis. Clear? Tendon is inserted to posterior surface of the radial tuberosity, aponeurosis with the deep fascia and even the posterior border of ulna. Clear? Yes. And this is the next muscle, coracobrachialis, as I said. It goes to the medial surface of your of the shaft of the humerus. Shaft of the humerus.
Posterior or medial?
Medial surface. Not posterior. Posterior you find the triceps.
Yes.
Okay. So see here, you can see this muscle. See, this is going here. It's a very short muscle. Okay. And that's what I was telling you. It's not of much of functional importance. Yeah, that is the coracobrachialis. Coracobrachialis and biceps arising from your coracoid process. Okay. Okay.
Doctor, what musculocutaneous
Yeah, I will show you. Wait. So this is what is. See, they have labeled it even. You see.
musculocutaneous.
This is the musculocutaneous nerve. It is almost piercing the muscle. This is the coracobrachialis. Okay?
Okay.
Even some textbooks they explain it is between biceps and coracobrachialis. It is piercing almost. It is piercing the coraco. See there. This is in the muscle fibers. This is the coracobrachialis. This is the musculocutaneous nerve. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, musculocutaneous nerve. I will just take out this labeling. You have any blade?
لا تقطع الدنيا ايش.
I mean, damage this.
Obvious, it is obvious.
No, I want to take out this labeling. Okay. So this is the musculocutaneous nerve. You can see the branch supplying the biceps also. See that? Okay, it is even supplies the coracobrachialis and even the brachialis. This is the brachialis muscle. Okay, originating from the lower end.
It supplies also the biceps brachial.
Yeah, it is the nerve of the anterior compartment, right? Which is the nerve of the anterior compartment of arm? Musculocutaneous. It supplies coracobrachialis, biceps brachii, and medial half of the brachialis. Brachialis is having dual nerve supply. The lateral part by the radial nerve, medial part by the musculocutaneous nerve. So later it continues as your lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm. This is the lateral continuation. They have cut that. Okay, this is the continuation as lateral cutaneous nerve of the forearm. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. So now, so you finish the three muscles: coracobrachialis, biceps, and brachialis. See, this is the brachialis. The tendon goes and then inserted to the coronoid process, forming the floor of the cubital fossa. This is what is cubital fossa, right? This is the cubital fossa, forming the floor.
Floor of the cubital.
Cubital fossa is by brachialis tendon. This is the brachialis tendon. Okay? So this is the brachialis muscle. So what is the action of brachialis?
Extension.
I don't know why there is confusion. See, it is in the front. I told you never by heart, never do parroting about the actions. You understand the attachment, whether it is going in the front or back. If it is going in the front of the forearm, crossing the elbow joint in the front, do you expect it to do extension?
No, flexion.
No. It has to do flexion.
Posterior.
So why there is confusion? Why you said extension? See, it is going in front, crossing the elbow joint in the front and going to the coronoid process, ulna. Yes. So when this contracts, it shortens. Then it brings the forearm towards the arm. Yes. But this action is flexion. Flexion movements are bending movements. Extension are straightening. Simple. Okay? So triceps, it is going on the back. So when it contracts, it shortens. It has to do extension. No confusion there. So brachialis, biceps brachii, and even coracobrachialis. Now coming to the vessels and nerves. Which artery you find in the arm?
Brachial artery.
Brachial artery. Very good. This is the brachial artery. What is this? Brachial artery. So which is cut actually. It is here. Continuation. Okay. So this is the brachial artery. And see this. This is the median nerve. Why do you say it as median nerve? Not because of it is labeled here.
Yes.
I become that.
Why it is you say it as median nerve? Because it is crossing the artery. See here, first it is there on the lateral side. This is the thumb. Orient yourself. This is the thumb. First it is there on the lateral side. Okay, as it go down, it is crossing. See this?
Divides. Yes.
It is crossing. The brachial artery is like this. It is crossing from lateral to medial side. You can bring one more model where the artery is intact. Just go and check and bring one more model. So it crosses the brachial artery from lateral to medial side. If you see it here in the cubital fossa, the nerve is medial side. This is thumb, little finger. This is medial. Artery is lateral, right? Okay. So at the